Actually kind of interesting because, after the experiences I had with my mom, I was kind of the same way, whereas I didn't really take any back talk from anybody, or, I was very outspoken and, you know, just kind of problematic, I guess, in a way. But when I was in college, I actually got into a relationship that turned abusive and towards me. And it definitely shifted and changed the kind of fight mode that I would get into. I don't know, it's interesting that when I was younger, and my mom abused me, I was like, oh, I'm not going to take BS from anybody kind of situation. But then I got in this abusive relationship in college. This guy was a lot bigger than me. He was on like testosterone and stuff like that. After that, it was just, I think maybe it was just different because it was like a romantic relationship, but I definitely became more of a people pleaser. I became more like shy. I didn't really stand up for myself. Kind of lowered all my boundaries, and that's actually when I kind of sought out a therapist and tried to figure out how to change those things about me. And even my older brother was like, "This isn't like you at all. Like you were the type of person that would fight somebody if you needed to fight somebody, But now I'm more of like avoid the conflict, kind of people pleasing, and I'll say yes if I want to, like even if I don't want to, kind of thing.
And you're still there. I'm a little bit of a people pleaser now too. I've been in enough fights,
Yeah,
what I
that's
mean?
true.
It's kind of like, but my girlfriend's a people pleaser. She sees a therapist about that as well. Me, I think I can because I've already. The reason I feel that I avoid the conflict because if I'm going to engage in a conflict, I feel that it can escalate to higher levels.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd rather like really pick the battles and I let a lot of stuff just slide. Like, okay, whatever. But once I pick something, I know like, hey, this can really snowball. So that's something I do know about myself, and I'm okay with that. And but if I have to say no, like I've never been shy about being like, no, that's not gonna work. How's that for you? How do you muster up the?
I mean, it's still a work in progress, that's for sure. But I've definitely gotten a little bit better about it. I think the one thing that my therapist was telling me was that I do it out of fear because I don't know how the situation's going to turn out, So if I upset somebody, if somebody asks me to do something or something like that, I worry that, it'll upset them and kind of not harm me, but it's just like a natural reaction that I get because of, a situation I was in for years. And he was definitely the type of guy that, flip with a switch. I mean, he was diagnosed bipolar, and so that made it really hard for me. But, now I just kind of have to realize, like, not everybody's going to do that. That's kind of one of the things that I teach myself. And, like, I deserve a voice, That's the biggest thing is, like, if I don't want to do it, I should be able to say no without, the fear of what's going to happen if I do say no. Which is, like, really difficult for, like everybody in general, but specifically women, I feel like they kind of have a harder time with that.
What's an instance where you've stepped up and said no as of late?
I don't know, that's a good question.
Or stood up for yourself, wherever there's the situation where you're like, hey, this is, put my foot down.
I would have to say with my older brother. So like ever since I got therapist, I think one of the biggest things, he was always the golden child, and he had this really weird way of kind of throwing little jabs at me every now and then. That didn't really make me feel so great. And I know, I don't think it was this last Christmas, might have been the Christmas before, one of the two. I was telling my family, like, hey, sorry, didn't you guys get you guys Christmas gifts? I spent so-and-so money on plane tickets. And I thought it was a very innocent thing to say. I didn't think it was a big deal. And, he kind of pulled me aside and was like, Lily, you're flaunting your money in front of their face. Like, you don't need to be saying that. And I remember it being like, I don't think, I finally kind of stood up for myself. And I was like, I don't think that was an issue at all for me to say. Like, and it's also not my fault and I didn't mean this in a bad way, but it's not my fault if they're not pursuing a career where they want to be making money. Like, I shouldn't have to feel bad for what I say around them. And it's not like I've spent it was a plane ticket, But yeah, there was that time, and there's been times where I'm like, I don't really appreciate what you're saying, which is something that I never really used to do with him.
Have you been surprised by the responses?
I guess a little bit. I think, yeah, a little bit. I think they're just more quiet more than anything because they don't really expect that response from me. So they're just kind of taken back a little bit, and they don't really say much. I kind of expect more of like an apology, but I know that some people, kind of need to do some self-reflecting first. So
Yeah, apologies a lot. Apologies a lot. I think fundamentally what I expect is for someone not to do it again.
yeah,
And then I don't need an apology because some people apologize and do it right back to you 10 minutes, 10 minutes
Yeah.
from there. I've always noticed that when you set a boundary and you're stern, people move around that. Like, people know, like, there's a intuition that we have, unless someone really is trying to get under your skin.
mm-hmm.
And then when you stand up for yourself, I even knew, like, in prison, or growing up in LA, I knew very quickly that I would have to nip things in the bud as soon as it happened.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I didn't, it sets precedent on how other people can treat me.
Yeah, I can agree with that. I guess, when my therapist was talking about how I need to set better boundaries, and I did actually start setting them, I did tell her, like, it really did shock me because you kind of actually have control over the way you let people treat you in that way. And I remember, like, that was kind of a revelation to me because I never really thought that before. I remember thinking, what did I do to deserve this? In a lot of situations in the past that I've been through, what did I do to deserve this? And I think, realizing that setting the appropriate boundaries and implementing them can really kind of avoid some situations, not all, but some situations.
I think they're long term, they help you be you without having people walk over you. People are going to do what you let them. And, for me in the streets, like, there's always a threat of violence. So, like, if the boundaries, we're using the word boundaries, but this isn't what's used, it's like respect, right?
Yeah.
And it could be it's the exact same thing, what we're talking about, really. You're setting a boundary for your self-respect. But in the streets, there's the threat of violence that I can have. And now, I can't use that. There's always that in the background if it's with another guy. Maybe a possibility, but now it's like I have to learn to meet people in a kinder, more compassionate way when I set my boundary,
Mm-hmm.
versus like being very aggressive with the boundary setting. And that in and of itself, like, I've just had to learn, how to talk to people with, like, respect and be like, hey, this bothered me. Can you not do it again?
Yeah.
And I've been surprised. People are responsive to that. They're like, oh, okay.
Yeah, I've always kind of been a big advocate of, like, there is a way to, like, respectfully convey how you're feeling to people. I actually just had a conversation with my friends about that recently. I was just planning to go visit them. They live in Hawaii, and I was asking, like, would you like me to come? Like, I don't want to be a bother because this person's in grad school, so they're very busy. I was trying to make sure it was, like, when they weren't working and whatnot. And I was like, I just really don't want to be somewhere where my, like, presence isn't, like, valued or appreciated, especially, like, if you're busy. And, he just kind of flipped a lid and was like, that's very self-centered. It's always about you. And kind of went off on me, and I had to be like, hey, I really don't appreciate the way that you're speaking to me right now. Like, you can express your feelings with respect and be respectful towards me, but calling me self-centered and, saying that you're really stressed and these things, like, I don't appreciate, taking jabs at my character, basically, And I also was really confused by it because I was asking, what is it do you want? Like, I was like, do you want me to be there? Do you want me to come when you're not in school? And so I was kind of taken by that. But, by the end of it, I was just like, I'm kind of deflated from this conversation. Maybe we can talk about it another time. So.
And did you talk about it another time?
No, we haven't spoke. It wasn't that long ago, though. maybe a few weeks ago. So we'll have to see. I know this person in general gets a little like hot-headed, I guess, or when we talk about touchy things. So I just kind of get hesitant too. I feel like if it's not super important, then, maybe not. But I also feel like if I don't, if he doesn't feel remorse about the way that he like spoke to me, I just don't know if it's necessary.
And this was a friendship that you had?
Oh yeah, we're really, really good friends. We've known each other since high school. I'm friends with his family. We've been there for each other for a long time.
Yeah, I find that to be a good policy. You still leave the door open, but it's not, you're not losing any sleep over it, I like to always be available. Like, I'm available,
Mm-hmm.
If I've already put the ball in your court, I've already put the ball in your court.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe you put the ball in their court one more time, but it's never going to be third or fourth or fifth. It's
Yeah.
like, this is a relationship of sorts, and it's going to always take two people who are willing to be committed to friendships, partnerships, etc. What's your vision for your future now?
Well, I mean, I tell people this all the time. I don't generally want to stay in the same place for too long. I definitely want to travel around. I've always said I'll stay somewhere for maybe 3 to 5 years and kind of move somewhere else. I just think life is too short not to kind of experience things.
Where do you want to go next?
That's a good question. I was born in California and I've slowly been going eastward. So I guess I'm just going to keep going that way. But I know I've really been interested, which isn't east, but in Washington. I just get a little worried because I know I can sometimes get like seasonal depression. So it's always gloomy there. Washington, Oregon area seems really cool. I've always been interested in Florida too. But the humidity scares me, so I don't know, we'll see.
Let's talk a little about therapy before we finish up. What are your takes on people taking therapy, the need for therapy, and how's that helped you in your life? Because I know clearly it's a net positive.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I'd say it really depends on the therapist itself. There are times that I've gone to therapy and it really hasn't helped me at all. Specifically, when I was younger. And I've seen a lot of people that have attempted to go to therapy and they just don't really like click with their therapist, or maybe their therapist isn't as involved, I guess, or
From your personal experience, what does a lack of a connection from even when you were younger, and then to different experiences, what's that look like when the therapist where you and the therapist aren't really getting anything done pretty much?
So I would say in sessions, it's more of like a venting session. Of course, people want to vent, but you're seeking, some advice or help or insight on, why it is you might be acting a specific way. And I think some of the experiences I've had is I'll create a situation or explain a situation that I've been through, and they'll just kind of be like, well, why do you think that happened? And I'm like, well, that's what I'm here asking you. I understand I'm supposed to self-reflect and everything, but, why do you think that happened? Sometimes there are sessions where it's just, I feel like I'm just telling, how my week went, and I'm not really getting any value out of it.
Have you found a good therapist now, or as of late?
Recently I stopped going, not necessarily because I think I don't need it, just because they had switched platforms and I was financially not able to go. But she was all right. I'm not as of recently, I wouldn't say.
What do you think? What do you think when they ask, what's your reason why for the major issues in your life? What do you think is the underlying current? Do you think, I'm a childhood trauma type person. I do think a lot of our adult behaviors are greatly impacted by how we've experienced hurt in our youth, and love for that matter. And it's going back to those moments and trying to really make sense of those big core moments and then move forward. But what do you think when you're in there, when they ask you, why is this happening? Besides, well, can you please tell me?
I mean, I definitely agree with you. I think a lot of it like stems from childhood trauma, you know. I used to tell my boyfriend all the time, I'm not sure if therapy is going to help because I understand why I am the way I am because of childhood trauma, but how do I fix it, right? So that's one of the things that really kind of persuaded me to go, is assuming or hoping that they would be able to help me fix those issues, because I understand why I do them, but how do I change them, you know? So more of like, you know, character development or some advice into what I could do to change those things.
Mm. That's valid. My girl goes to her therapist, and she's a childhood trauma type person, the therapist. And the tricky part with my girl and her therapist is that my girl can't remember her childhood. And that is, from what the therapist says, it's a telltale sign that, okay, there is some complex trauma where it's hard for you to remember. And then she's, on her journey to unpack that. But in the meantime, you can live one hell of a life.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can do them both in conjunction. Like it's not going to hold you back. It's like, hey, I'm getting better internally and externally. Like I'm still marching towards this goal and these other goals, and life is still beautiful in that way. For me, the only reason why I say I think childhood trauma is a big part of our mental health as adults is because I myself experienced that pain as a kid. I also had a lot of good moments. I had 5 siblings. I got the love I needed from them. My mom was, a single mom. She disciplinarian and provider. That was her role. But I got the love I needed from my sisters. But that hurt from, as a kid, I never addressed it. And if I were sharing this with you 4 years ago, I'd be in tears.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was the first moment I started to address these issues. But I know when I sat down, and I didn't go to a therapist, but I got a DUI and I had to get sober. And I had one session one-on-one with the mandated therapist who was there, and I just kind of talked to her, and she kind of told me a few things that resonated with me, and she was like, well, what are you doing to stay sober? What's your routine? I told her, I wake up, I exercise, I pray, I journal, and I do this every day. She looked me down the eyes. She goes, writing in your journaling and talking to a therapist, they're kind of on par. Mm-hmm. They're kind of like the same thing is happening. If your therapist is asking you why, you can sit down, write it down, and ask yourself, well, why is this happening?
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. And you really can get into your own truth. Mm-hmm. And when I left that session, she also told me a few other things. She told me that I shouldn't be as promiscuous as I was. She didn't say that, but she said it's not healthy, is what she told me. She told me that this isn't normal. Because she asked me, she was like, well, how long have you had the same partner for? Or how many partners have you had in the last month? At that time, I was 3, and I thought that was low. And she looked at me and she was like, that's unhealthy. You need to learn how to be intimate with somebody and stuff like that. And I had never heard that before. No one has ever told me anything like that. And I sat there and I listened to her and I was like, okay. The only other place I had heard this was at church.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It was kind of different wording, and I was like, okay. So I continued to journal, but the biggest thing that I did is I sat down and I wrote my memoir from when I was from when I can remember until I got out of prison. And I relived that moment I shared with you. And that was, to me, the most painful moment. And I sat down. My brother was gone traveling for hockey, and it was just me in the house. And I sat down and I wrote down what I remembered. I wrote down what I felt, and I just wept. And a lot of the book that that I wrote, those were the key moments to release all that. And I didn't do it with the therapist there with me, but I did it with the intention to see my story with love and hope, and because I could easily sit down and write it and be bitter, but I don't like how that feels. It's taxing. And after I wrote that big scene, the most hurtful one, all the other scenes became easier to write out. They weren't as hard as that one. That one was the toughest one. And I reconciled all of that back into me, integrated it back into myself, because I was also ashamed of being beat. I was also ashamed of being poor. I was ashamed of my story. And when I wrote it down and I addressed those big hurts and made the intention to see it with love and accept myself and my story as it is, not as I wanted it to be, it's like I became a whole new person.
It's interesting you say that, because my therapist and a lot of people that I've talked to actually that deeply know me and all the intricacies of my life, they always tell me you should write a book.
I think everybody should.
Yeah, I started something, but it was not very long. It was just a prologue of something, and I think one of the biggest fears, I guess, of doing it was just number one, how do you put it all down? There's so much there, but number two is talking about it. I think that's one of the things that I'm, I guess, nervous about. I don't want to necessarily say that I'm not ready to do something like that. I guess I'm just more nervous. I think that I'm ready to do it. And then another pressure I feel too is, I'm not the only one who went through that kind of stuff. So I always wonder too, what is their thoughts of how I portray it going to be.
Oh, you mean the people around your story?
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what I dealt with that too. And who cares?
Yeah, at the end of the day, that's true.
But I felt that I had my back against the wall, and it was more I did let my sisters know, I let my mom know, I let my dad know. My mom was like, hell no. If you're going to write a book, write it about yourself, don't include us. So I was like, well, you guys are in my story. She was like, well, what are you going to say? I was like, well, what happened? And she was adamant about the no, and she was visibly upset. And I think it was one of those things I wasn't going to budge. So I just looked at her. I said, look, either way, I'm going to write this book. And I made sure that they knew that it was for me. And she looked at me. I think she's, like I said, like we said earlier, people end up, once you really put your foot down, it's the world moves around that, and she looked at me and she said, well, best of luck with it then. Told my dad same thing, cussed me out for a little bit, etc. And then I'm ready to lose relationships. If I have to choose my story and my truth and who I am, I have to choose who I am. I have to step into the world as my own person.
Yeah.
I have my family as support. But when it's all said and done, it's just me.
Yeah. I know it gets difficult. I mean, I definitely am coming to that phase in my life where I don't really care about what my family thinks anymore, which has been a huge step because it was such a prevalent thing in my life where it's
freeing.
Yeah, it definitely is. But one of the concerns too that I have a lot with specifically my older brother, you were talking about how your girl sees a therapist and she doesn't remember certain things. My brother actually has that issue a lot where I'll tell him about certain things and he's like, oh, initially he's like, he used to call me a liar about it. And I was like, I'm definitely not lying about it. But then, he started hearing more things from my little sister. And I was, recently, this is off topic, my grandparents actually passed. So we were going through some of the old stuff and I was showing him some of the court papers that we had. And I was like, look, it's true. It happened. Like these things happened. And he was just like, man, I must just suppress it. Like I must just suppress it in a box. So I guess that's another thing I worry about, is he going to think I'm embellishing things, But again, who cares?
In
But,
writing a memoir, you are recollecting from the best of your memory as best as you can. It isn't 100%. No memoir is 100%. Like you're also trying to move a lesson around it, but you're not going to be exact in the details. As long as those things happen in scene wise, like this occurred, it happened.
mm-hmm.
And I had the timid. I went back and forth before I decided to really sit down and put it on pen and paper and then print it and all that. And it is a conflict. That's natural when it involves people being seen in a negative light.
Mm-hmm.
But like love wins. That's what I found. Like the people who love you, they could see that and they could be like, oh, that didn't happen, still love you. Right?
Yeah.
And then the people who were there and experienced with you, yeah, that happened, still love you. Like I do think that true love transcends things like this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found. That's what I was betting on, to be honest, when I started writing the book, because I did have those withdrawals, like, should I do this? Should I not? And I told myself, hey, like, love wins.
Yeah. Yeah, I really hope that, like, especially with my older brother, because he's always very outspoken about the things that I do,
Such as?
Just everything. I mean, it's calmed down a lot now that we're older, and he has started a family of his own, which is nice. But just so many things. A lot of it, revolved around our mom. Like, why do you have to speak so negatively about her, or why do you talk to her like that? Things like that.
You can write the book with taste.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Which, matter of fact, it's not a personal vendetta. This is just what happened,
Mm-hmm.
and this is how I perceived it. And that's that. One of the big realizations I told you I wanted to take my own life, and I've been close to death before, as being a gang member and then going to prison. I've been shot at. I've been involved in street politics and things of that nature, and I never felt close to death. Like I never felt the fear of it because I was numb. Like I felt I was operating on a numbness level where these things are kind of like going into it now. It would give me the worst anxiety, But
Yeah.
since I was abused as a kid, it's like I'm kind of bred for it in my own way, and I lost my train of thought. where were we at? Prison, numb. Oh, okay, yeah, I remember now. The realization I had when I was deeply depressed and all that. So I was numb. The closest I felt to death was when I was in that deep depression. I was like, damn, it felt like death was imminent. Like the shadow of death is around me. Like everything's hollow. Everything's one-dimensional at best. I'm striving for meaning. And I was just like, you know what, I'm going to do it. And it didn't become a matter of if, it was a matter of when. And it wasn't just like a thought like that. I wanted the high anxiety to end too. I never had panic attacks before. And then just feeling that panic, the anxiety, I couldn't fall asleep. My thoughts are racing. I was like, man, this is not I thought it was my punishment for certain things, and I was like, I didn't get away scot-free with all the things I had gotten away with. And, for me, I was at that rock bottom, and, before I was going to take my own life, for me personally, I was like, what do I have to lose to go to God? And that's when I really had a moment that would save my life. And, I was crying. I was like weeping every night during that time. And, I just was grasping for any hope. And my heart cried out to God. And this is like an internal thing, like it's the deepest part of you. And, I cried out to God, and I was like, please, And in that moment, though, of like despair and solitude where I was at, like I felt personally that in the end, it is just me and God. My mom wasn't there, like in this moment of do or die, like nobody else is there. I was filled with regret. My biggest regret was that I didn't do what I had felt God put in my heart, that I didn't write my story, that I didn't go and pursue my dreams. Like, that regret was weighing me down, that I could have done more, and that I cared what people thought, But in that dire moment, like, all those people who I cared what they thought, they're not there. Mm-hmm. That it's just I do my best for my family and my friends, but in the end, I know it's just going to be me, and I don't know if you believe, so you don't have to, but I'm just telling you, my story, that when it's all said and done, it's just me and the man upstairs. Mm-hmm. And that freed me from, like, the chains of what my parents thought about me, of what my sisters thought about me. And man, it was amazing. In that moment, I felt connected, I felt forgiven, I felt hope, and it was a catalyst to live. And but yeah, I'll never forget that realization. I live my life from that truth. I do my best for my family, but at the end of the day, like, I'm living my own life. Mm-hmm. And whoever wants to come can come. Mm-hmm. And if you don't, you don't. Understand you're living your life. You're on your path. You're on your walk. This is mine. I'm always available. Mm-hmm. But to those, but if people aren't supportive of what I'm doing and of my life, I'm like, okay, as long as I go to sleep at night with a good conscience, knowing I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, all that noise doesn't matter. Yeah. And it took me having to almost kill myself to be like, what, who cares what people think?
Yeah. Well, I definitely, when it comes to other people, I guess I don't normally care too much unless it's people that I'm close with. I think that's when it tends to affect me. But with my, like I said, with my family, I worry a lot about that. But I'm definitely getting better with it. I think one of the biggest things that I realized.
Do you think it would be a huge part of your healing if you did write this book?
A part of me, yeah. I think a part of me thinks that if I get it out there, I can kind of be done with it, But I don't know until I do it, So that's one of the things. But yeah, I was mentioning, like, one of the things about that I realized I wasn't really, like, too concerned about my family anymore is I think came to that realization when I would go back and they never took the time to get to know me as an adult, right? So I haven't told you this, but probably more than half of my family has me blocked on social media and my phone number and stuff. And a lot of that just has to do, I asked him one time, and a lot of it they just said, well, you have different values, you have different morals. Your way of living is not exactly the way that we would do it. And so I was like, okay, that's...
What does that consist of?
Well, I think because at the time I was in college.
Is your family religious?
Yeah. They're very, very religious.
Don't you find that odd that a family can be very religious and very judgmental, and then they're the ones who are really kind of messing you up?
Yeah. I think that's kind of one of the reasons it kind of pushes me away
Of
from
course.
religion a little bit. But also, a big reason too has to do with some of the trauma that I've been through. I know that, I used to go to church every day growing up. They were Baptist Christian, so I used to go every Sunday. And my mom was an alcoholic, so there was one time she wanted to sober up and go to rehab, and she had the pastor's son come and read Bible verses at the house.
Did it work?
Well,
Probably.
it actually was horrifyingly, it just went horrifyingly bad. Like, he actually ended up raping her. Yeah, so it was, and then I lived in such a small farm town that he ended up
Can
being
you say that the
the pastor's son.
went in and, yeah, that's horrible.
Yeah, so
What happened to the son?
I'm not entirely sure. I can't really remember. I was so young at the time, but I do remember the cops coming in and, taking
Yeah,
samples.
my
and-
girlfriend hates religion as a whole. Like, if you talk to her, but you'll feel it too.
I really, yeah, I definitely, it's those instances, that I think really kind of make me a little bit standoffish
Of
towards
course.
it. I remember when and after it happened, I was still somewhat religious, but I just refused to go to church. I was like, I don't see a point in going somewhere where somebody's going to be preaching us what's right and wrong, and they can't even do it themselves, That really bothered me a lot. And I lived in such a small farm town that this pastor's son, he would substitute like bus drive every now and then. And I remember me and my older brother, we had a really hard time, getting on the bus and going about every day with that. But
You would have to put that in the book.
yeah, yeah, that's true. But
Yeah, that's horrible, and for good reason. I mean, my experience with the church was more of a positive one. But people have those experiences all the time, and you should do what you got to do to protect yourself. And it is sad, people do bad things, and the church will protect you sometimes, for doing bad things, and anyone can call a hypocrite a hypocrite. It's one of the worst things you can be, if not the worst. And I've met a lot of people who have, been turned off by religion. I don't go to church on Sundays. And I don't let a pastor tell me what my faith should look like with me and God either. If I do go, I do listen to sermons. If I do listen, I'm listening to take what resonates with me and live my life that way. But yeah, when I came back from trying to start a whole new life, I did feel that I would need for myself some sort of spiritual belief or practice. Because a depression that low, it's almost spiritual. It's so deep inside. It's so it's just like you need help. I needed help, and faith was my answer for me. But there's other ways of healing, and I do think when you make an intention to search that out, you end up getting it. I do think that God is kind to all of us. Whether you go to church, whether you're religious, whether you're not, I don't, that's just what I believe, and whether you believe in God or not. Right?
well, I guess I'm neutral about it. There's nothing to say that it doesn't exist, and
Would you say you're a person of faith? I think we all have faith. When you're reaching towards a goal and you're dreaming of a better life, it requires a bit of faith. When you need things to break in your favor that involve things out of your control, I think it requires a little bit of faith. And that faith can give you a sense of wonder still, like a kid.
yeah, and in some ways, I mean, I know, going through school and also the town I grew up in, there was a native tribe there. But even going to school, I took a Buddhism class. My boyfriend's family's Buddhist, even native beliefs. I think I kind of take little things from each religion or belief, and obviously
Make it
there's a
your own.
curiosity of
Yeah.
it, but yeah, I kind of make it my own, you know, because there are little bits and pieces to each religion that I definitely agree with or believe in, and there are things that I don't in each of them as well. So, you know, like I said, there's a curiosity, and I definitely don't want to like say that there isn't a God or there is, and I don't want to say, you know, that karma doesn't exist or it does, or, you know, there's certain things that I believe, but I can't say collectively I'm wholehearted.
What's one of the few things you believe?
Um, I
They don't got to make sense. Just FYI.
I guess one of the things I've been leaning towards, which kind of goes against, you know, being Christian or anything like that, but a little bit of reincarnation, like the Buddhist belief of reincarnation, or even native, certain native tribes believe that, you know, like you give back to the earth, right? So you, a lot of the times you get buried, you give back to the earth, and you get reincarnated. But Buddhists specifically believe in karma. So, you know, if you did morally well in life, or, you know, were a good person, you'll get reincarnated into an eagle or a tiger or something. You know, you do really bad, you might be a cockroach, you know. But I know with native belief, it's slightly different. But learning about both of them, I think, is something that kind of intrigues me, and I do think might be a possibility, mainly just because, you know, I've been told so many times, like, you have an old soul, you know, and there's certain things that, or even certain people that I meet that I'm like, wow, I feel like I've known you forever, or something like that, or certain talents that, you know, like I'm really good at drawing, and I'm like, I don't know where that came from. I guess that's just something that I kind of lean more towards a little bit.
Yeah, for me, this is my last life. I'm done. I'm done. You know,
Yeah.
my hope is that this is it. I'm gonna do what I was say
I mean,
here to
it's
do.
hard, so.
Yeah, I have talks with my brother Ralph. I'm like, bro, I'm not coming back. You know what I mean? I want this to be. This is it for me. Like, I'm gonna really do what's in my heart, live with no regrets, and this is it. This is my last go around. Right? And that's not to say that, you know, that I believe in reincarnation, but it makes sense to me, you know, a little bit sometimes. And, you know, do I think we reincarnate to like ants or something? I think you reincarnate to like another person. I don't know,
Yeah.
or you've been here forever, and I don't know. I'm ready to go. You know, hopefully the aliens come and I get to go with them.
Yeah. Life is hard enough, that is for sure. But I do think, you know, if you were reincarnated, obviously, because we're living life now, like you wouldn't really know.
You wouldn't know, right?
You would have
So
no
yeah,
idea,
hey, I
but-
just let's I want to go home. That's my take, you know.
But even with Buddhist belief, like when you get reincarnated, you can get reincarnated, but eventually you
you
achieve.
ascend, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot the name of it, but it's Nirvana, maybe? I can't remember, but you eventually achieve a certain
How do you
point where-
feel about death? What are your thoughts on death?
I mean, it kind of scares me a little bit, which obviously anybody who's not super religious, it might scare you, right? People who are
Right.
religious are like, oh, it doesn't scare me too
My
much.
girl's terrified of death.
Yeah, it definitely scares me a little bit, you know, because if there isn't, you know, a heaven or an afterlife, then what is there? You know, I guess it's more of the fear of the unknown than it is death itself. Just because I don't know, and nobody really knows, you know? So I think that's what scares me the most, is it could just be nothing, you know? But I just find that really hard to believe for some reason. I feel like there has to be something. It's not just blackness for the rest of eternity, you know? But
Yeah, I feel like if you live your life to the best of your ability, but for me personally, if I were to live my life to the best of my ability, even with all my flaws, that I try to put my best foot forward. And of course you fail, right? And I fail often, but I didn't quit, and that I kept on going, and that I loved as best as I could, and that I gave with a good heart. It's like, hey, I'm ready for whatever's next. You know, I left it all on the playing field. I didn't hold back.
yeah,
And for me, that is really love, exercising love. And how does that look like? It looks like loving myself and loving others, of course, loving God, but just trying. Most people give up.
I guess another fear too that I have is, with religious belief, there's heaven, right? And you get to meet up with all your loved ones and all that sounds nice. But the question that I have too is, is my mom going to be there, kind of thing,
Would you want her to be there?
I don't know. That's a hard question. I mean, I guess a large part of me, yes. But I just don't know how it would go, especially, I mean, I don't know how long I'm going to live, but it's been over 12 years, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I don't really remember who she is, So I think the reunion of it would be kind of weird for me. Like, what would there be to say? Because there's been so much built up resentment and guilt and sadness, it's...
What would you want her to say?
Sorry. Just for...
Do you know that I think that out of addiction, if your mom was out of addiction, she would 100% tell you she's sorry.
Yeah.
In addiction, from experience, it's like you just wallow in your own guilt and shame.
Yeah.
And for me, because to address these big issues, the pain that I've caused somebody, it's almost insurmountable. So I'd rather just drink again and get deeper in the hole. But one of the things we learn in sobriety is that you need to face these issues head on. And it's one of the things that, is part of healing for the addict. So she definitely said she was sorry, I don't know if that, but if she's sober in heaven,
Yeah, that she wouldn't. Yeah, it's true. I don't know. I guess other than sorry, I don't really know what else. And more than just the abuse, though. I think the biggest thing that me and my brother really deal with is, like I said, we built up a lot of resentment because she's left us with the responsibility. Like, my little brother now is 16. My older brother's a year older than me, so 28, 29. And he has to take custody of my little brother now. Now my little brother normally they were with my grandparents, but my grandparents just passed recently. And so we have to deal with, probate. As 27, 28-year-old kids, we have to deal with probate and, selling the house and splitting up between 12 grandkids. And, we have to deal with the custody of my little brother, which we just found out he got somebody pregnant at 16 years old. And it's this buildup of these things that just creates a lot of resentment towards our mom, which 12 years has passed. So, you'd think we would kind of be over this by now. But it just feels reoccurring,
Yeah, it's like, even in passing, you're still dealing with the chaos you left. And that's fair. But to go to a Buddhist way of thinking is accepting it as it is, right?
Yeah.
And taking it for what it is. Like, she's gone. Your brother needs to be taken care of one way or another.
Yeah, it's been a constant struggle
That's
with
wild,
us both.
Though. He's 16 and got a girl pregnant. So now you guys got to take care of a family. So
Yeah, and my brother right now, he has 2 kids of his own, so it's just been really stressful for the both of us, mostly him, because he's the one taking care of my little brother.
So is your little brother still living with your older brother?
No, he just recently moved in when the school semester started this semester, so late August, not that long ago. Because our grandmother passed in May, I believe it was. Our grandpa passed probably a year and a half prior to that. But I guess my
Yeah,
little
that's
brother
tough.
found out like the day of my grandma's funeral that he got this girl pregnant. And so we're dealing with funeral arrangements. We're dealing with, trying to figure out if she has life insurance and all this stuff. And then that kind of, drops the ball. And it's just been a lot because, obviously the baby needs to be taken care of, but we don't know how to go about it. Tough situation.
That's tough. Um, it's a fascinating conversation though with seeing your mom in heaven and what she says. Sorry, like I find that to be a fascinating one because you can go so many places with it. Um, and there's some people who wanted me dead before, and even in prison, people hated me. Fun fact about me, I ran with the Crips in prison, so I stuck out like a sore thumb, and it was definitely a harder route. But like the tough thing is to wish the worst on somebody, and the way that I've always seen it is like, hey, in this life, I don't wish the best for you.
Mm-hmm.
But whatever happens after, whatever happened here is over.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you the best after. Because life is tough.
Yeah.
Like, I've always respected people who are not on opposite sides of where I stand on any level, who were straight up people. And why would I want to waste an eternity of hell on anyone if that's out there?
Mm-hmm.
I'm more of a happy-go-lucky on the afterlife myself. But yeah, like, hey, what happened here, life is hard enough here. I do pray that heaven, that we all be like, man, I was tripping. All that's over. Like, this is a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when people are naturally in much better places, hearts expand. And that's here and probably, whatever happens after, that you're able to see things from a different point of feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think that's how it'll be if I die, and I'm like, man, I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you made it. It's like sportsmanship.
Yeah, good game.
Yeah, good game. Hey, you tried, right? You tried. Yeah, but hey, all that's over now, but we're not there yet. Like, we're here still dealing with life and
Mm-hmm.
still addressing issues that people caused. Me personally in my life, my mom was homeless for not long, a couple of weeks. She got evicted. We've been paying her bills, me and my sisters, for 4 to 5 years now. She's not a citizen.
Mm-hmm.
So she doesn't get any of the benefits and stuff, so we kind of have to just take care of her finances and stuff. But my mom cannot live with any of us. And that hurts.
Mm-hmm.
Because you want to take, we are taking care of her.
Mm-hmm.
We want it to be better, but for her to be in real close proximity to us, like, we know what we've been through,
Mm-hmm.
and we know that dynamic will rise again.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to find ways to take care of her without being so close to her.
Yeah.
And it's painful sometimes. Like right now, I'm getting, because this is fresh, and I, as of late, I found out she got evicted. And when it's a process. So when it was happening and stuff, I flew back to LA just to kind of see what's happening. And I see my mom, and, I see the state she's in, and it's heartbreaking. The whole situation is heartbreaking. Like, why can't you just be like a normal grandma?
Mm-hmm.
Where it would be a net positive to have you around,
Yeah.
and where we could live. Because one of my sisters has a home in California, and my other sister has a, like, the opportunity was there, but because of the dynamic being toxic, that it's not feasible. And I went down there, I saw what was going on, came back here, flew back the next week. Um, we found her like a long-term stay motel. Got her in there. It's in it's in the ghetto. It's in the hood. Um, it's like, man, this is tough. To know that that a part of you this is their reality.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because when my mom didn't have custody of me, she still lived in the same town when I was living with my grandma. And she lived more in town. My grandma lived out of town, but I would go in every day to check on her. And this was at the time, like when I was in therapy and I was on probation, and they would tell me all the time, you need to stop doing that. And I just couldn't help it. I was like, well, what if she's in there dead? Nobody's going to check on her. Nobody cares, So I would go in every day and check on her, just make sure she was breathing and everything was fine. And I remember one of the things that the therapist told me was, Lily, you're a kid, and you're going in there with, which you want to check on your mom, but what's going to happen if you go in there one day and she is dead, Like, how is that going to impact you? And she's like, I need you to realize that one day she is going to die. Like, she is an alcoholic and she's a non-functional alcoholic. You need to realize that that is a reality. When she said it to me, I was, very upset. I was, a minor at the time, a child practically, and I didn't want to hear that. But, in a way she was right. I am kind of glad, when my mom passed, she was in Mexico. It wasn't something that I had to walk in on. It wasn't something I had to see. And I guess, I'm grateful for that. But, there was some experiences I had where I walked in on her, and it definitely was not a pretty sight. She had been passed out for so long, for weeks, that she had ants crawling in and out from her nose and her mouth because she fell asleep while she was eating. And, she definitely, she's passing away from jaundice, liver failure, so she's, yellow and, of course, naked. And being, 12, 13-year-old girl, that's not something you necessarily want to see. But it's definitely sad, I definitely wanted to live, a normal life. I wanted to be able to be around her and see her, but it just wasn't the reality that I had, It was definitely something that I needed to realize wasn't feasible at the time.
How do you find joy these days with your life and the heaviness of your experiences? How do you find the lightness, like the love, the joy, the laughter, and what do you do to gravitate towards that versus going the other way?
I think I mentioned it earlier, but friends. One of the biggest things. So when I moved off on my own, the first job I got when I went to college, it was some cafe called MTO Cafe in Vegas, and I had a manager there, love her to death, but she just kind of surprised me. She came up to me one day and she's like, well, you always talk about your grandparents. Why don't you talk about your parents? Mm-hmm. And I was kind of taken by surprise, and, I kind of opened up to her a little bit. It was like, they're not around. She's like, I could tell. And I was like, really? Why? She's like, I don't know. You just seem a little bit older for your age. You're, humble and sweet and nice and all this stuff. And she's been kind of taken on like a mom figure in my life. She's always been there for me. She's always been there to like talk me through things. And one of the biggest things that she always told me when I was really down and out about like, hey, I don't have a family and, I've been through all these things is, family's what you make it. And I think that's something that like I've really kind of held on to. I find a lot of joy in the friendships that I've made and the support that they give me, especially compared to like the lack that my family has given me. And I remember with my boyfriend, his family was really supportive and really there. I remember even being emotional the first Thanksgiving I went to because they just accepted me. It was there for me like way more than anybody really ever has. So I think that's really what it is, just making family what you make it and appreciating those friendships and the people that do show up for you, holding on to that.